and I am the Chief of Community Engagement for the City of Boston. I'm so excited to really kick off this conversation tonight. I want to first start by welcoming our interpreters for tonight and acknowledging the accessibility measures that BPS along the city has taken to make sure the message and the listening session was accessible as possible. First, we have our Spanish interpreters, Brendan and Luz.
Buenas noches. Para quien habla español y necesita interpretación, en breve vamos a aprender la función. Entonces, si está en la computadora, va abajo en la pantalla, va a clicar en el globito, después elegir interpretación. Si está en el celular, va a clicar en los 3 puntitos, después elegir interpretación y después elegir español. Muchas gracias.
Good evening, buenas noches. I will be the other interpreter in Spanish. Seré la próxima en interpretar junto con Brendan. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have for Mandarin, Fanny and Tina.
Oh, go ahead, Tina.
Oh, thank you. Hello, this is Tina. I'm the Mandarin interpreter. 大家好，我是您的普通话翻译。那么今天的普通话呢是一会儿他们打开了这个翻译功能之后，你会看到，如果你是电脑上线的话，你会看到它有一个长方形的块，你就点击这个翻译这个，然后找我们的普通话的频道。欢迎您上线之后可以跟我们打个招呼。那么如果您是用这个手机或者是用平板上线的话，你要点右下角的3个点，然后才能进入到选项这个频道的这个选项。好啊，一会儿见，祝您今天的会议愉快。Go ahead, please.
Hello， 大家好，我是今天的也是 Mandarin 的翻译哈，普通话的翻译，我叫 Fanny。如果你们需要的普通话翻译服务的话呢，在屏幕下方的长方形控制的我栏中，你这种 interpretation 那个呢，就可以点出你所需要收听的留言，你这个收听普通话的会议的翻译。谢谢大家。
Thank you. Then we have our Haitian Creole interpreters, Natalie and Nancy.
Bonjour, moi c'est Nathalie. Donc, pour les gens qui ont besoin d'interprétation créole haïtien, ou pour aller dans le contrôle bas, qui n'ont pas en bas écran, et puis vous cliquez sur interprétation. Après ça, cliquez sur langue que vous avez entendre. Vous avez accès à la réunion en créole haïtien.
Et nom c'est Nancy, c'est moi-même capable l'autre interprète qui est en créole pour créole haïtien. Merci.
Thank you. Then we have Cape Verdean Creole, Zenilda and Josiane.
Thank you, Brianna. Good afternoon. My name is Josiane, one of the Cape Verdean interpreters assigned for tonight. Boa tarde, para nós ter acesso à interpretação na crioulo, nós entramos na parte inferior do nosso ecrã, nós clicamos no ícone de globo e selecionamos a língua cabo-verdiano. Se nós estamos usando um telemóvel, nós clicamos no 3 pontinhos, depois aparece uma parte escrito language e lá nós escolhemos cabo-verdiano também. Obrigada e boa tarde.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Zanilda. I will be your Cape Verdean interpreter for the evening. Boa noite, tudo bem? Meu nome é Zanilda, também ser intérprete de Cabo Verdeano, juntamente com minha colega Josiane. Mora que Josiane flagas instrução para ter acesso à interpretação de Cabo Verdeano. Obrigada.
Thank you. And next we have Vietnamese, Van and Long.
Vâng ạ, xin kính chào quý vị. Tôi là phiên dịch tiếng Việt Long Trần. Và để được sử dụng cái tính năng phiên dịch của Zoom thì chúng ta vui lòng tìm trên thanh điều khiển phía dưới màn hình biểu tượng hình quả cầu có dòng chữ interpretation và sau đó chọn ngôn ngữ mà mình muốn nghe. Thì bây giờ chúng ta hãy chọn vào cái phần tiếng Việt để chút nữa thì họ sẽ bật tính năng lên và chúng ta sẽ chọn vào để chúng ta có thể nghe được cái phần phiên dịch tiếng Việt song song ạ. Xin cảm ơn quý vị.
Xin chào quý vị ạ, tôi tên là Vân và tôi cũng sẽ cùng với Long để phiên dịch trong buổi ngày hôm nay ạ. Xin cảm ơn quý vị.
Thank you. And we also have our ASL, American Sign Language interpreter, Jody, online as well. So I'm going to hop right into just some interpretation features. Everyone, please turn on your interpretation. The interpretation feature is on now. Please note that if you want to be included in the English channel, you also have to go to click the globe at the bottom of your screen and actually opt into the English speaking channel as well, as long as the other language channels. For tonight, it is being recorded just to also notify you all. This will serve as a resource for the people that weren't able to be here tonight. And this will be posted online at the Green New Deal for BPS website. I am really, truly excited to be with you all tonight to introduce the Green New Deal for Boston Public Schools, a commitment to really upgrade our school facilities to serve as a full service community hub and be engines of climate resiliency. Last week, Mayor Wu and Superintendent Brenda Casillas, who we'll hear from soon, came together with BPS educators, community leaders, parents, teachers to really reaffirm that every student in Boston deserves a learning and a learning space that is healthy, that is safe, that is energy efficient, and that's truly inspiring. And to really underscore the commitment to using city funds and city leadership to deliver for each and every single one of our students. This begins with an initial $2 billion investment to launch the major projects we'll discuss tonight. Tonight, you'll hear from a lot of city leadership as well as BPS leadership that is managing the process and get a chance to ask some questions as well. To kick us off, I'm glad to welcome and say hello to Superintendent Dr. Brenda Casillas.
Good evening, and thank you, Brianna, for inviting me to say a few words tonight. I'm just so incredibly excited and so excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to join us this evening to learn more about the Green New Deal for Boston Public Schools. I first want to start by thanking my team. I have Chief of Operations, Indira Alvarez, with us today. I also have Deputy Superintendent Sam DePina here, and they have their teams with us. I know Megan Costello, Senior Advisor, is on the call as well. Just a number of incredible people who are behind the scenes doing this work in tandem with our incredible leadership at the city. I, of course, want to thank Mayor Wu for her continued support and commitment to the Boston Public Schools, and also investing in our school buildings, which is one of the first things that I spoke with her about when she was a candidate and also when she won as mayor. I'm excited about this plan to overall BPS facilities and what it's going to mean for our students and our staff, our educators, and our families. This has been a priority for me since the first day I stepped foot in our schools. And, you know, I am just so excited about this opportunity and to see that finally we are going to give schools the buildings that give students the buildings that they deserve. You know, the way a school building looks and feels when students walk in has such an incredible big impact on the way they feel about learning. Every one of our students deserves what our suburban kids have, which is to deserve to walk into a school building that's modern, up to date, well-equipped, which encourages them to learn, and just importantly, it makes them feel great about who they are and about the day ahead. This new investment in our facilities will ensure that our students are learning in school environments that stimulate and fuel their learning. Our children have faced so many challenges through this pandemic, and this announcement gives us hope and reflects another step towards tackling inequities in our city and in our schools. Boston future leaders are learning right in our Boston classrooms today, and our future depends on their success. And with this investment, we are fulfilling a promise to them and our community to create learning environments that are going to help them succeed, thrive, and achieve their dreams. I am excited beyond belief that we are going to be sharing this with you this evening, some more specifics about the Green New Deal on this information session. And we have a packed agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn it right over to you, Brianna, but thank you again for being here this evening. There'll be a lot of information up on the website, a lot of information that will be coming to your school site councils if you're parents, and so a lot more information about how you can be involved in this really long process to renovate our school building. So thanks again.
No, honestly, thank you, Superintendent, for planting a lot of the seeds to address some of the facility concerns that parents have, and blossoming the Green New Deal for BPS as a result. I want to also start off by acknowledging that for a long time, our school facilities planning and management have created a lot of frustration and mistrust for families and parents and faculty and everyone. The amount of facilities work that is needed has made it very difficult to execute and plan a district-wide approach. Decisions have been made haphazardly. Decades of deferred maintenance have left, us today with tough decisions and pitted school communities against each other. But we really truly owe it to students and the community at large to be clear and transparent with decision making. And that's the goal of today and many more conversations to come. Tonight is one of the first opportunities to learn how the Green New Deal for BPS, for Boston Public Schools, will be different from past approaches, how committed leadership, new planning tools, and an initial $2 billion commitment will accelerate the pace and delivery results for students, for families, and for educators. To give you an overview of the agenda tonight, as Superintendent said, a very packed agenda, but full of fruitful and great information. First, we'll hear from Dion Irish, who is the Chief of Operations for the City of Boston, who will speak about the new shared leadership approach of addressing the facilities concerns. Next, we'll hear from Indy Alvarez, who is the Chief Operation Officer at BPS, about the foundational tools that are guiding the project proposals and investments, and which includes the building dashboard that was published last week alongside the announcement. We'll then walk through the Green New Deal for Boston Public Schools website, show you the major new projects that are being proposed, as well as the map that shows the facilities projects, both big and small, that are being planned for next year. And we'll serve a portion of tonight to answer some questions that have been pre-submitted ahead of time alongside your registration for tonight. Please also feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions or share any feedback or thoughts. We'll do our best to try to answer those as well. I also do want to acknowledge some of the other star-studded team. I want to recognize Sam DePina, who's the Deputy Superintendent for Operations for Boston Public Schools, Denise Snyder, who's the Acting Chief of Family and Community Engagement for Boston Public Schools, Morgan McDaniel, who's the Deputy Chief of Operations for the City of Boston, and Chair of the Boston School Committee, Jerry Robinson. Honestly, this is really a star-studded cast that has worked to address these district-wide concerns. I'll now turn it over to Dion Irish, who's the Chief of City Operations for the City of Boston, who will talk about the leadership team and how they have managed the Green New Deal for Boston Public School process.
Thank you, Brianna, for that introduction, and also thank you, Superintendent, for your welcome to everyone and for your leadership on this. And last but not least, thank you to the Mayor for your leadership and commitment. It's a pleasure to be with you all here this evening. My name is Dion Irish, as Brianna said, the Chief of Operations, but I'm also a graduate of Boston Public Schools. The City of Boston's Operations Cabinet is responsible for managing facilities all across the city. Our school buildings are some of our city's most important facilities. As Chief of Operations, I lead an interdepartmental team working closely with the Boston Public School Operations team and other members of their teams, and we're excited to collaborate to pick up the pace of new school builds and renovations. Over the last 40 years, only 9 new school buildings were built in Boston. The Build BPS process has started to get new projects off the ground, and we're excited to open the new Boston Arts Academy this fall, to continue the construction of the Josiah Quincy Upper School, and we're about to break ground soon on the Carter Elementary School. So in the coming years, we have new schools coming online. But we know that we need to see more than one new school every several years due to decades of deferred maintenance. We need to pick up the pace and to deliver safe, healthy, high-quality facilities that our students deserve. We're taking big steps to invest in the team and the tools that we need to get this work done. We're adding over 25 new staff members across the operations cabinet and in BPS to build the capacity we need to execute our plan. In our public facility department, we'll be adding 10 new staff positions, and 15 new staff positions will be added to our BPS facilities team. We recently hired a new Deputy Chief of Operations, Morgan McDaniels, and her job will be to focus primarily on school facilities. This will give us the people we need to manage these projects and get them done. With these new resources and our partnership with BPS operations, academics, administration, community engagement teams, as well as with school leaders, educators, students, and families, we're committed to providing Boston students with the schools they deserve. For now, I'll turn it over to Indy Alvarez, Chief of Operations for Boston Public Schools, and I look forward to speaking further later on this evening. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Dion. As mentioned, my name is, short version is Indy Alvarez. I am the Chief of Operations for Boston Public Schools. I am a former BPS graduate, West High, a former BPS parent, and I am honestly and truly committed to this work. Tonight is just the beginning of many meetings to come, and I look forward to the great work we're going to do together for the students of Boston Public Schools. Thank you, Superintendent, for your leadership and support. And thanks to the significant, thank you to the mayor and the significant investment she has committed to that has made it so that cost is currently not a factor. And that feels good to be able to say that. The City of Boston and BPS are investing in new foundational tools to inform decisions and improve the process of building schools. We're working closely with our city partners to improve BPS facilities. The building dashboard created by the BPS operations team was published last week. This is an internal dashboard, and we're looking forward to the FCA, which we'll be talking about later on in the presentation. This dashboard was built over the last year, and it combines data from various sources. The school year 22 opportunity index, capital asset, and environmental audit reports. This dashboard, it is updated by our facilities team, and it helps prioritize proposals for major new constructions and renovation projects. I'm going to leave it here and then turn it over to Amy Shan, the manager of strategy and analytics for Boston Public Schools operations team, who's one of the mastermind behind this dashboard. Amy?
Thanks, Cindy. Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. I will go ahead and share my screen. There are just a few slides I want to cover to lay the groundwork for the building dashboard, and then we will go through a live demo. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so as Indy mentioned, the BPS operations team developed the building dashboard, which combines a bunch of different building related data sets on the condition of our schools. And we created a dashboard and prioritization system with the goal of coming up with a comprehensive, equitable approach to prioritizing different schools for funding and renovations. I wish we could fix every single school with the click of a button, but unfortunately, due to resource constraints and timing and just overall logistics, we have to come up with a more thoughtful way to go about the schools one by one. So this is the purpose of this building dashboard. Like Indy said, this is an internal tool, but we wanted to share it with you all for transparency, just to see where we're at in this process of gathering data to then inform capital planning decisions. And we are very much looking forward to the FCA, the Facilities Condition Assessment, which is this industry standard, very robust, detailed building data set that will help further inform capital planning decisions going forward. And so when we go to the next slide, just to lay some of the groundwork behind this building dashboard. So it includes a bunch of different maintenance categories in our school buildings. And we like to think of it through the metaphor of an iceberg. So here on the screen, you have an iceberg with that horizontal line being the surface of the water. If you see an iceberg floating in the water, there is a bit of that iceberg that shows up above the water, And that's what we're calling as cosmetic needs. As in, if I were to walk into a school building, I might notice the painting is peeling, the lighting needs some work, the landscaping could use a trim, all very important concerns and needs, and those are cosmetic. What we often are unable to notice when we walk into a school building are those infrastructure needs. So the areas of the building that refer to that larger piece of the iceberg below the water, things like the heating and ventilation and air conditioning system, HVAC, the plumbing system within the walls, the boilers back in a boiler room that we cannot see, things like that. And while these infrastructure needs are often less noticeable to the community or even me when I walk in a building, they are very, very important to evaluate when prioritizing buildings. We need to take a look at the entire iceberg of building needs. And that's what the building dashboard does. It takes a look at the entire iceberg. And so we can jump into the building dashboard now. This is a publicly available link. It was released along with the mayor's announcement on May 12th. So let me just jump in there. This is a publicly accessible link from the boston.gov website or the BPS website that says the Green New Deal. And this dashboard is composed of many different pages. You can scroll through the pages on the left-hand navigation side. So you'll notice that it's divided into two sections. The first section being the overview of different summary pages. And then section 2 is the much longer section that goes into detail the different maintenance categories that we have. And so we'll go through a few pages from each section during today's call. So first up, we have the first page, the introduction page. This gives an overview that I covered in the slides earlier, also mentions the facilities condition assessment coming up and the map of capital projects across the city. This page is also translated into various different languages. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at buildings@bostonpublicschools.org. Going to the second page, this is our district summary page that shows a table of all our schools along with their address and the building needs score. This building needs score is a holistic score that is dynamically calculated, routinely updated for every single school building. We calculate this building needs score by two different factors. The first one being an internal building evaluation. So we looked at the capital assets, things like the boilers, the HVAC, the windows, the roof, and so forth, looked at their priority level based on the capital asset remaining useful life, so the condition of the asset. Then we had it reviewed by our engineers in the BPS facilities team, and then weighted the more critical maintenance categories more than the less critical maintenance categories. So that's 75% of the score. The other portion of the score is opportunity index, and that measures schools that serve the highest concentrations of students in need. Our hope is that by layering in these different data sets, we can come up with a more diverse and equitable perspective. So if you look at this school, Brighton High School's building needs score is 451.8. A higher building needs score corresponds to overall more building needs. And then, as mentioned earlier, Chief Irish mentioned, we have not many schools built in the last 40 or so years. 60% of our schools, this slice of the donut, those were built before 1950. Jumping to the next page, if you'd like the building needs scores per school distributed visually across the city, we have this. You can zoom in, zoom out, just like any Google map. If you hover over these circles, each circle represents a school building. So if I hovered over this one, this is Manning Elementary School. Its building needs score is 350.4. And based on that score, it is in quintile number 2. Buildings that have a higher building needs score, those circles are larger and in darker blue on this map. Going to the school snapshot page. So if you wanted to, just for your school or your child's school, wanted to look at the priority levels across all the different maintenance categories in one quick view, you could look at it here, either by clicking on the school, and then each table below will automatically filter to that school. Or you can go up here. Every single page in this dashboard, we wanted to make it easy for you to look for certain schools. So in the upper right corner of each page, you can click this box under school name, type in the school you'd like, be sure to capitalize the first letter. Automatically. Jumping to the next section, this is a category overview. So these are all our maintenance categories covered. So for example, we have boilers. Here we have the definition of the category. Then we have 4 boxes. For example, this one is boiler number 1 current age. This refers to the average age of boilers across the entire district. Boiler number 1 is the oldest. So if we took the oldest boiler from every single school building across BPS, average that age, the average age is 24.3 years old, about 24 years old. Assuming an industry standard of each boiler lasting about 35 years without repairs, we would have about 11 years left. But like I mentioned, we are continually monitoring and making repairs as needed. So it should last a bit longer, but we just wanted to give you this industry standard information as we have it. Moving over to the next slide, we have this bar chart. This shows the distribution of buildings across different priority levels. So for example, for boilers, if you hover over the high bar, there are 48 school buildings noted with boilers as high priority, meaning that these 48 buildings, if we were considering a boiler replacement, we would look at these first, and then also, of course, consider other factors in our decisions for planning, like logistics too. And then each maintenance category page has a table at the bottom. This shows for every school building a bit more detail on the selected maintenance category. So for example, you have Adams Elementary School. They have 2 boilers. The oldest boiler is high priority. It is 32 years old. And if you click on any column heading, it will sort the table for you. Jumping to another category, let's try painting. So this is a summary page for painting across our buildings. Again, the category definition is in the upper left corner. As you can see, we are a bit behind on our painting. Based on the average age for painting, we have about 19-year-old painting across our schools, and therefore we would like to replace it. And there are plans. We are continuing monitoring all these different maintenance categories, and so this is definitely on our docket. Okay, this next chart shows painting priority. So as you can see, most of our buildings are high priority for painting. And then you can see your specific school's information in the table below. So for example, the Bates Elementary School is high priority for painting, and their painting is currently 19 years old. But if I, for some reason, didn't want to scroll, that's fine. And I could search for another building such as McKinley, and then it would filter this table of all the school buildings to just the McKinley ones. Okay, I'll go through one more and then I'll hand it back to the group. So last one is drinking water. Shout out to the BPS environmental team for leading this district-wide initiative. So here we have the drinking water installation year planned across the next several years. In 2022, we are planning to install 51. Well, we're planning to bring 51 schools online with drinking water fountains instead of bottled water. Status as of now, 36% of our buildings have drinking water fountains. You can zoom in to this map. If a school is orange, that means they have fountains. If it's blue, that means they still have bottled water. And in this table, you can see a little more detail for your specific school. Great. You're welcome to click into this through the websites and play around and view the data for your school buildings. We hope that this is more transparency for the community to give you a sense of where we're at and also where we're going with the upcoming facilities condition assessment. So I will now turn it back to Indy.
Thank you very much, Amy. As Amy mentioned, a facilities condition assessment is an industry standard assessment. It is an independent, objective analysis of BPS facilities, which will include a detailed analysis that will produce an in-depth report of building condition and make recommendation for repair, replacement, and renovations. The work will take approximately 18 months, and it has already started and will result in more transparency, as Amy mentioned, for the community members, as well as inform future capital investment priorities. Additionally, there will be an inventory analysis will be incorporated into our current asset essential work order management system. And this is a brief overview, but we definitely have more information on our website. And I would love to now introduce one of my partners in this work, Carrie Griffin, the Director of Facilities, Public Facilities for the City of Boston.
Thank you, Indy, and thank you, everyone. So I'm very excited to be a part of the changes that will be ongoing within the BPS community. And so to just speak a little about my part in this, the design study will be, since April of 2022, we've been working with DLR Group to complete a school design study, which is a set of programming and design recommendations for pre-K through 6 and a 7 through 12 school to guide future renovations and construction, informed by authentic engagement with Boston and the school community members over the next year, by offering educational and programmatic standards based on BPS values and vision, including our quality guarantee, our commitment to inclusion, and our dedication to an equitable, world-class, high-quality education. The design study will reduce the time and expenses required for future school construction and renovation projects, accelerating the progress toward our district-wide facilities goals. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Dion and Indy to walk through the major project proposals.
Thanks, Carrie. I think we'll be pulling a slide up. While we're doing that, I also want to thank the school committee and Chair Robinson for their support in this effort as well. So we're proposing 14 new construction and major renovation projects guided by the Build BPS dashboard that Amy talked about, as well as continued district-wide upgrades. We're going to pull up the Green New Deal for BPS website to show you where you can find more information on each of these projects. If we have that up. I also want to show you this map. This map shows you new building projects and major renovations in yellow and other capital projects in orange. You can also click to see the district-wide upgrades in red. Zooming in, you can click on a particular dot to see the details of a project. For example, here you see the BTU K-8 pilot school has some district-wide upgrades proposed, which we'll explain in more detail in just a minute. You can also click the filter button to see the major projects over the last decade in green. Finally, you can use the filter feature to search for a particular school and see what's proposed. So now we'll walk through some projects listed on the website in more detail. First, you see the new building projects. There you'll see that we're making significant commitments to Madison Park Technical Vocational High School, the McKinley Schools, the West Roxbury Educational Complex, and White Stadium. All of these projects begin with a needs assessment, sometimes referred to as a study. A needs assessment, which is funded in our capital budget proposal for next year. This phase typically lasts a year. That assessment will invite students, families, educators to collaboratively build a vision for your school. What kind of programming you want to see, what kind of space we need to create the facility and facilitate the kind of programming that we want. And the conclusion of the needs assessment will inform the design and ultimately the construction. We're also proposing major new renovations to the Blackstone School and the addition of auxiliary space at the Otis School. For these two, we've applied for funding through the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or MSBA. That was approved by City Council and also by the school committee. We've submitted our statements of interest and we anticipate hearing back from the MSBA in the fall of 2022. I might add that the MSBA has been a wonderful partner to the city as well as many other communities across the state in helping us to fund these very large investments. Finally, we're proposing major renovations to the King School, the PJ Kennedy School, and the Cleveland Building, which houses the Community for Arts and Science and Health, often referred to as CASH. These are some of the schools that are in highest need according to our building dashboard. I'll pass it on to Indy.
Thank you, Dion. Just want to make sure that we understand, and just to give additional information, we are moving forward with additional funding to continue moving on past commitments. These would include a new pre-K to sit schools in Roxbury, Dorchester / Mattapan. The school design study referenced by Kerry will support the design making process in this work. We have not identified the schools for these buildings at this point and look forward to engaging with several school communities to map out a plan. We're recommitting to a new pre-K SITS school on the Jackson main campus and are moving into the assessment phase of this work. We look forward to partnering with all school communities during this process. The Irvin and the Timothy buildings will be closed at the end of the school year, and we will assess renovation potentials and use moving forward. Thank you. Then, sorry. Thank you. Starting this spring and summer, we'll be engaging directly with several school communities around moving towards a PK to SITS pathway for our students. And to go into the detail of some of these initiatives, I want to now introduce my Deputy Chief of Operation, the other mastermind behind a lot of this work, Teresa Neff Webster.
Thank you, Indy. Good evening, all. Thank you for having us. I'm going to be talking through some of our district initiatives that are ongoing. So we continue to invest district-wide to improve the safety, quality, and environmental sustainability of our facilities. These projects include an energy efficiency project partnership with Renew Boston Trust Program, conducting energy audits, reviewing energy conservation recommendations, which will include solar panel installations. Our indoor air quality sensor monitoring initiative, which began in September 2020 with the BPS Sustainability and Environmental Resources Division led by Catherine Walsh, has installed over 4,000 indoor air quality sensors across the district. The sensors have been installed in all classrooms, nurses' offices, and main offices, with rooftop units installed in our outdoor spaces for baseline location purposes. These reports are live on our public dashboard that can be accessed through our website. In addition, we've created an indoor air quality and ventilation plan that can be accessed on our website. Our air conditioner installation project sees us installing window units in non-HVAC buildings to ensure a safe and comfortable learning environment for our students. Over 6,000 units will be installed over 90 schools, along with associated infrastructure updates. This work has begun, is ongoing, and is estimated to be completed in 2023. The city invested starting in 2017 in modernizing over 106 school kitchens across the district to allow for on-site cooking of fresh and nutritious meals. Our schoolyard and exterior grounds improvement sees us partnering with the Community Preservation Committee and will continue the annual schoolyard improvement program with 9 schools in the fiscal year 23. These improvements include updated play structures, safety surfacing and landscaping, and additional schools will be receiving exterior grounds improvements, including landscaping and paving. Our bathroom renovation project is ongoing, which sees renovations across the district, upgrading fixtures, flooring, sinks, toilets, partitions, and lighting, along with painting. This work is building on previous years' projects in our bathrooms. The radiator cover installation project began in September of 2022 and is working to improve student safety across the district by installing covers on all exposed radiators, starting with our K0 and 2 classrooms. In addition to our district-wide Americans with Disability Act accessibility improvements, we continue to make entryway improvements to create a welcoming and calm environment for our students and staff. And last, but certainly not least, our drinking water access initiative with the support from the city of $10 million and a further grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency sees us investing in new filtered water fountains and bottle filling stations across the district that Amy referenced earlier. This is moving us away from bottled water. In addition to all of these district initiatives, we continue to invest in our facilities with improvements based on specific needs of our schools, which include accessibility improvements, garden installations, fire alarm upgrades, masonry repairs, and improvements to our library, art, science, and auditorium spaces. I want to end with just gratitude for the superintendent and the mayor for their support in all of the work that we've been doing and this exciting new adventure for us. And with that, I will pass it back to Brianna.
Brianna, before you take on, in my rush of going through my notes, I just wanted to finish up on one section of really great news, and my apologies if I allowed 2 more minutes. I'm going to make sure I slow myself down because sometimes I go too fast and skip very important information. I'm going to go back to one of my notes where we're recommitted to a new pre-K school on the Jackson Man campus. The first phase would be a needs assessment to develop a building program for the design and construction of a new facility. The study will evaluate 2 options. One with the elementary school, BCYF Center, and Horace Mann School, all on the same site. And another with the elementary school and BCYF Center on the Jackson Man site. And an alternative site in Boston identified for the long-term home of the Horace Mann School. We'll start engaging Austin Bryan school communities in the next school year to determine which communities will ultimately move into the new facilities. And with that, I will pass it over to Brianna, and thank you very much for the few minutes.
Thank you, Indy and Teresa, for those words and for all the work you guys have been doing on this plan. First, I want to have a quick note about timeline. As you've heard, the timeline looks a little different for each project or each school that's being proposed. We might not be able to have the specific answers to questions today, but the timeline are specific schools right now, but we're moving urgently and diligently to address the needs of each and every school. For each of the projects we just mentioned, starting over the next year, BPS will engage in direct conversation and engagement with school communities to map out specific next steps. The ongoing facilities condition assessment will give us the information that is needed to create a comprehensive plan, master plan, with a clear timeline for each school in the district. So I do want to just dive into questions that were pre-submitted upon registration. We did recognize a lot of themes with questions, and I want to kind of group the questions together while reading the questions verbatim, but also grouping them with kind of specific topics. So the first kind of theme that we've seen with the equations that were submitted from the registrants, from community, is what is the timeline for all the schools in Boston to undergo a transformation? How many schools will be built? How many retrofitted? How many retired? With so many buildings in poor condition for decades, how will you manage to simultaneously begin addressing the concerns?
Thanks, Brianna. I'll take that one. First, I'd like to state that we're moving forward with urgency to deliver a district-wide overhaul of our school facilities. As we talked about earlier, we're increasing the funding and the staff to get this work done, increasing our capital commitment to schools and investing in new positions to manage projects. And this is just the beginning. But at this time, we can't make a commitment for when all schools will be addressed. We're announcing high priority projects that we're moving forward right now, and we're investing in the tools that we need to create a comprehensive master plan, which will give us a clearer timeline for each school to be upgraded. We're also working smarter. We're kicking off the design study that we talked about to determine the programming and the design recommendations for pre-K to 6 and 7 to 12 schools to guide future renovations and construction. The design study will ultimately reduce the time and expenses that are required for future construction projects and for renovation projects. This will shorten the timeline between the conception of a new project and the end of construction.
Thank you for that, Chief. So we also did get quite a few questions about HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Specifically, will the HVAC systems in existing schools be upgraded? Currently at the Cleveland, specifically, the filters do not fit and serve any purpose. What is the amount of money for HVAC ventilations? What are the specific timelines for HVACs in the schools or lack of HVACs? 3/4 of Boston schools lack ventilation. What are we doing to address the ventilation? Basically is the core of the questions.
I'm going to see if we want to have our team, Teresa and Amy, join, but we're doing, the decisions are made in multiple factors, and we do have plans that we're working on to make sure that we can address our HVAC system across the district and prioritizing based on conditions. I know that, the Brian Ford, who's not here with us today, and his team are really actively making sure that we understand what the conditions are and addressing them, the emergencies as they come in, but then also addressing them for a long-term plan. I don't know, Teresa or Amy, you have anything else to add?
The only thing I would add is that part of the facilities condition assessment is to determine the infrastructure needs in buildings to see if they can be retrofitted for HVAC systems, and then those who are not able, we will then work with our partners to decide what can happen in the buildings that are not able to be retrofitted appropriately.
Thank you for those answers. The next question is around what does this mean for Build BPS? Does this mean that Build BPS is now defunct? How is this different from other plans we have seen in the past?
I'll take that. So the Green New Deal, it represents the city's renewed focus on building Boston students the school facilities they deserve. Build BPS was a great start. We've gotten some really good projects out of Build BPS. Folks will be able to see the Boston Arts Academy this fall. We talked earlier about the ongoing construction of the Josiah Quincy Elementary School, and also we're breaking ground on the Carter School. So Build BPS did accomplish a lot, but I don't think any of us would agree that we are where we need to be. So, the Green New Deal represents a renewed effort, a renewed commitment. We're doubling down on this. I don't think we talked about the numbers, but we're estimating that with this current list of projects we're proposing, we're looking at about a $2 billion commitment over the next decade. And this is just the beginning. We're looking to continue to grow and expand so we can increase the pipeline and get to more schools as quickly as we can. So this is sort of the next iteration of Build BPS.
Thank you, Chief Irish. We have another question around just a level of transparency. How will community engagement, communication, implementation, and transparency be a part of decision-making that may differ from the Build BPS experience as well?
So I would take this one quickly. So I want to reiterate some of the messages that was given this evening. We're committed to being transparent with our community members about where how making decisions and how we're prioritizing certain projects before others. Because of the decades of deferred maintenance, there is so much critical work that has to be done, and much of it has to be done yesterday. We can't do everything at once, but we owe it to be clear about why we're making these proposals now. Last week, we published the building dashboard to give you a clear understanding where we see the greatest need. And many of the major projects we discussed tonight reflect the top 20 highest need buildings and as indicated in the dashboard. That doesn't mean that those are the only 20 buildings that we're working on. We're making plans across the district to all 125 buildings. And I think I heard the question right, and that was a response. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to add, but I do look forward to our meetings in the future and really add more context.
No, thank you for that. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of questions directly from the chat. We have from Anna Mudd. As a BPS parent, I'm grateful for the investments in the system. But as a climate voter, I'm looking for more details about what makes this a Green New Deal policy. Will the plan include specific goals on benchmarks on renewable energy or use for emissions reductions? Will the plan include goals for green jobs or creations for BPS students and others in Boston?
So I'll take that and I'll try to speak slowly because I understand that I'm in City Hall and my mic is a little bit echoey. So schools make up nearly half of our city-owned building emissions. And we know that the building sector is a major driver overall of climate emissions in Boston. So building new schools and retrofitting existing schools gives us the opportunity to create low carbon, no carbon facilities such as the Boston Arts Academy, as folks will find out. Our Renew Boston Trust is a program that self-funds energy conservation measures in city-owned buildings. And in phases 1 and 2, the program has already replaced or upgraded equipment in 37 buildings and saved $1.1 million annually in energy costs and reduced 1.5% of our municipal emissions. Phase 3 will install energy conservation measures such as building envelope improvements, high efficiency transformers, and water fixture and lighting upgrades in 9 school buildings, and will install solar panels on 15 additional buildings. So as you can see, this is just the beginning of the commitment that we're making for every renovation that we do, for every school project. We will be incorporating green elements to that. These projects will also in turn fuel green jobs, and we'll be working closely with our environment and energy team and our soon to be new Green Deal advisor to make sure that we're embedding our green initiatives in our school facility master plan that we're developing.
Thank you, Chief Irish. I think the next question from Maria, what is the timeline for the Otis? If anyone can answer to that or any background.
I can take this, Brianna, if you'd like. And
Yes.
I also just wanted to highlight, in addition to the core projects we do with the MSBA, the BAA, the JQUS, the Dearborn, we also do every year, we put in about 5 to 6 submissions of boilers and window projects. So that's in addition to the other work. Like this year, we're getting started on 4 new schools, and we submitted for this year's statements of interest, another 6 schools, and that's a variety of windows and boiler and HVAC upgrades. And in addition to that, we also do the RBT program, which allows us to do take care of some of the HVAC systems and controls in these schools. So there, in addition to the core, there's a lot that's going on with through the grant funding and other ways to procure. In terms of the Otis, that was submitted as this year's, that was submitted with the Blackstone for this year's MSBA. We'll find out in the fall if it's been accepted. And then based on that, we'll move forward or, you know, discuss for the next fiscal year what the plan is in terms of supporting that addition, even if it isn't allowed for the grant funding. So right now we're in this holding pattern for MSBA approval, but we should receive that the fall for both buildings. And then we can make better decisions based on what we receive for funding.
Thank you for that answer. I think the next question we'll have is if one of our Spanish interpreters could read Daniel's question in Spanish and maybe translate it as well. That might be helpful.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Brianna? No.
So I can give the live translation of what the question says, but in English. But so the question is from Daniel in English. I have 2 kids in the Manning K-6, a small school and one of the few inclusive for special education. How are we going to maintain and fortify space for students that have specific needs in small schools? Anyone wants to take that?
I'm sorry, Brianna, can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
the question from Daniel is, it's framed as, I have 2 kids in the Manning K-6, a small school and one of the few inclusive for special education. How are we going to maintain spaces for students that need specific like small school needs?
¿Me oyen? ¿Me están oyendo? Yo creo que no. Pienso que...
There you go, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'll take that question. I think what we'll do is, as part of this process, obviously we're going to work with assessing all the school's needs.
Bueno, esa es la pregunta que yo voy a entonces dejarles saber lo que vamos a hacer con la escuela Manning y poder adaptar las necesidades que se tienen para poderlos trabajar con los estudiantes que necesitan el grupo pequeño y atenderlos. Queremos dejarles saber que tendremos la conversación para diseminar la información de una forma colectiva.
Next question from Tokyo. Can you explain the scores in quintiles? I would love for someone to explain this to me there, me as well. Does high score mean higher overall need? Is lower quintile meaning higher priority? And
yeah, that's a
also
great question.
Providing the definition will also be helpful. I think what a quintile is. That'll be great.
Yeah, for sure, totally. Great question. So the building needs score, a higher building needs score means that the building overall has higher needs. So based on the methodology shared on the dashboard side, page 2, it means that a certain building has more maintenance categories noted as high priority, combined with a higher priority score, and then those high maintenance categories are also more critical. So for example, if the roof fails, the school cannot open the next day. If a wall is unfortunately peeling with paint, the school can still open. So it's the relative levels of critical need. And then in terms of quintiles, so we divided all the schools into 5 groups. So that top 5th of all the buildings with the highest building need scores, that's quintile 5, versus quintile 1 is the fifth of the school buildings with the lowest building needs score. So in conclusion, a higher building needs score and a higher quintile both correspond to buildings with higher overall needs.
Thank you, Amy, for breaking that down for us.
Yeah, sure thing.
Just a reminder for everyone to, all the speakers to speak as slowly as possible. This is being recorded and will be shared online after as well. Want to make sure we get all the nuggets of knowledge, as my mother would say. Back to the pre-submitted questions. I'm wondering, these are the questions that are pre-submitted with upon your registration from some of the attendees that are here today. I'm wondering how this Green New Deal will ensure a reduction in greenhouse gas emission from BPS. I'm confused on the use of the Green New Deal language. The Green New Deal, does this mean there's going to be more green plants? So I think there's questions around, what makes this plan a little bit more Green New Deal? And I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, but if we could reiterate some of those, that would be great.
I can take that. So for when we build new buildings, we're required to build under the net zero ordinance that I think was put into effect in 2020. We also build to the BERDO guidelines that really deal with emissions. So we look at emissions, we look at what we can produce on site, what we can get ready on site, and everything is very site specific based on what's available, the actual size of the site. But that is at our forefront for all the buildings that we build, and the new BERDO renovations used to have just for new buildings, but now also includes existing municipal buildings. And though that could actually, I'll see if I can throw that in the chat for where those guidelines are on the city website.
Thank you for that, Carrie. The next question is, I'm concerned that my kid's school might be closed as a part of this plan. I'm concerned about the consolidation of smaller schools. It seems just another way to close down schools. What is going to be the process to ensure a thoughtful merger in the new Dorchester Elementary School? Do you have specific schools in the mind for mergers? Are there plans for upgrades for existing buildings?
And I'm going to start and then pass it over to Sam. There are plans for existing buildings in terms of, and then I do see Megan light came up. There are plans for existing buildings in terms of making repairs. And we have already started engagement and making sure that we're communicating with families and having meetings started. We started a couple of them yesterday. We'll be moving forward with many more meetings. I do want to make sure that I give an opportunity to Megan and or Sam to give a little bit more details on that question. I don't know which one want to go first.
Megan, I'll defer to you first.
Thanks, Dr. DePina. Good evening, everybody. Megan Costello here with the superintendent's team. One of the pillars of the Green New Deal is certainly taking a look at all of our schools and thinking about, is there an opportunity to combine smaller schools which would allow us to deliver on the quality guarantee, both in terms of the academics and the programming, but also the facilities that our students deserve. So right now, a lot of our small schools don't have things like gymnasiums, cafeterias, art rooms. And so by moving to a potential 2-campus solution, by using 2 of our smaller schools, that might be an opportunity to provide us with more of the quality guarantee that all of our students deserve. So we're in the process right now of understanding what small schools we have and where those opportunities might be. And it's really important that we have conversations with those school communities first before taking them to the larger BPS community. So we're engaged in that process right now.
And the only thing I would add to that is that we're committed to engagement and transparency as far as this new group goes and this new approach goes with the Green New Deal. We want to make sure we're as transparent as possible by having the community forums, by talking with school communities, by getting feedback from all stakeholders in every school, from the teachers to the students, to the parents, to the partners, and making sure we have a lot of good information that informs our decisions going forward.
And just one more thing I'd love to add on that, Sam. For all the new builds, so we've talked about Dorchester new build, Roxbury new build, Alston Brighton new build, there will be a community process that will begin next school year to bring together all of those neighborhood schools that are in that neighborhood together to determine who will move into that school building, the new build. So it will likely be a handful of the schools that exist there, thinking about the design study that we're doing and how we want to have a foundation of what we want elementary and secondary schools to look like. So that work will be completed. So we will then be able to begin the engagement process with all of the schools in the neighborhood to determine who moves into the new building.
Thank you for sharing that question, for that answer. The next question that we have is, will small businesses get an opportunity to put bids on projects? Will any of the projects have a project labor agreement or similar requirements?
I can answer that one.
Okay.
So for right now, our Department of Public Facilities is working closely with Supply Diversity. We just started a pilot program for one of our larger projects that is currently out to bid with, it's the renovation of, it's not a school building, but we do work and have worked over the last year closely with our Supply Diversity team to look for opportunities and provide access to smaller businesses in order to, because right now the way for public procurement under 140, we bid everything that we do in the department is 149, 149A. But we are looking and working with our partners in the state and at DCAM for opportunities for how we can, lift up smaller businesses. So it is something that we have been actively working on with the Supply Diversity team for the last year.
So Kerry, can you just talk a little bit more and explain what 149 and 149A are, and also DCAM?
Sure, Chief. So 149 is the statute that our department, and 149A are the statutes that our office is required to procure construction work under. And basically it's the guidelines are lowest responsible and eligible bidder. And essentially there are 18 categories for filed sub bids that have to be DCAM certified. Smaller businesses find it very challenging and difficult due to the bonding requirements and some of the insurance requirements. So, and also just getting DCAM certified, it becomes very challenging. So we want to create something like a mentorship where we can lift up these smaller businesses to help them get that certification. It's the procurement process is it's pretty rigid, but it's also it also has a lot of safety guards in place. So it's not it's a good process. It's just it can become difficult for a smaller business. And so we want to work with people and help them get through that process and, take a smaller business to the next level or give them an opportunity for where they're at through the procurement process.
Thank you for that answer as well. Next question, can you share why the team is doing another facilities condition assessment when a full one was done in 2017? Is 5 years the average life of a study? What is the cost of a new study?
I'm going to ask Teresa to take this one on, to just go ahead and explain what, Teresa, what was actually done in 2007, because it was more of an overall study that did not necessarily go into the intricacies in terms of details that the FCA will go into, and just explain a little bit of what the FCA will do for our buildings. Sorry about that. Teresa.
We can answer in two parts. I'll take the first and then hand it over to Amy. So the facility condition assessment that was done in 2016 is now out of date. It was not updated appropriately. Therefore, the data is not appropriate. and correct based on what is currently occurring in our buildings. The facility condition assessment project is an industry standard that should be reviewed on an annual basis. So once we do this baseline project, which will bring us back to current standards of what our buildings are, the current standards of our buildings, we'll be able to use both our Asset Essentials work order system through our facilities team and an annual evaluation through the facility condition assessment and index to have a more living assessment that is going to be able to integrate all of the work that happens in our buildings so that it will be it will just be a more living space for everything to house all the work that's occurring. And then I'll pass it over to Amy to talk through what is actually being addressed in the facility condition assessment work.
Yeah, sure thing. So as Teresa alluded to earlier, the SMMA 2016 assessment currently on the Build BPS website, it was extremely high level. So if you go on that website right now, you could click on a category like the building envelope, and then it would just give you a rating of poor, adequate, good, versus the facilities condition assessment that we're launching. It will tell us the condition of every single boiler in the building, the facade, the type. They'll go to every classroom, evaluate the painting, the floors, the ceilings. In addition to that, it's a space analysis, so it'll show us for a new modern building, what are all the spaces that it should require. We also have an energy audit, as well as an ADA assessment for the American Disabilities Act. And then we're also barcoding everything that will then be integrated into the Asset Essentials work order management system to better track this exact boiler at this exact school was replaced on this date, and annual maintenance should occur on this date, repair should happen on this date, and replacement should happen on this date. So it's a giant data set, much bigger and more detailed than the SMMA prior assessment. They're actually different assessments. The FCA is much larger.
Thank you for that answer, Amy. We have some specific school questions. Where do you plan to build new schools in Roxbury? What renovations will you be making with the schools presently in Roxbury?
I can answer that, Indy, if you want me to. I can take that. Part of the study program that we're doing we'll be working in conjunction with the facilities assessment team with BPS. So both of us will be working collaboratively together, both design teams, both teams with the community. It'll be a robust community process across the district. And we will look at that and assess based on the building condition, what makes the most sense. Does to renovate a building or to demo it and build a new building to meet the needs of the community. I don't know if that answers everything or if someone else wants to jump in.
I think the only thing I would add on that, Carrie, is that we are going to do a community engagement process to determine, which schools are identified for the new builds. And then, that kind of opens up potentially several other buildings in the neighborhood, right? So all of this to say, this is going to be a multi-year process for some of our neighborhoods as we determine, what schools are identified, but it will begin next school year.
Kind of along those lines, what is the plan for deciding actual school buildings, K through 6 schools, which K through 6 schools will actually be utilized?
Go ahead. Just I think that is part of the assessment and the study and the community engagement to be able to get to what schools. Unfortunately, we can't answer that tonight, but we do look forward to when doing all the engagement to get to that response.
And the only thing I would add to that is that, currently we have been over the years moving towards the K6, 7, 12 pathways. So we want to make sure we take our time and match the work with aligning the pathways and grades to the building work construction.
Thank you. What is the renovation plan for the McKinley in the South End? Is there a yes? Is there a renovation plan for the McKinley in the South End?
So, India, I can jump in on this. So right now in the capital plan there, we're going to look at all 3 McKinleys. And then that, again, there'll be a community process as part of that. And that will determine what's the final result. But we will be looking at all 3 buildings in conjunction in terms of their programming and the services that are offered in the school. So that will be a result of the study. And again, all of these studies will have high community involvement with the families and the school community.
Yeah, just to add on to what Kerry said, is that in this capital plan, there's $175,000 earmarked for the design study to look at the requirements for all 3 McKinley school sites to make sure that we determine a solution that effectively serves that school community.
Thank you for that. This is a very straightforward question. Why isn't my school on this list? I don't know if I want to take that.
What is the school's name? Or so the building dashboard includes, the building dashboard includes all the schools. Schools are combined into buildings. But if you're asking about the capital project proposals, I will defer to someone else in the group. Thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Dion.
Dion.
Go ahead now. You go first and then I'll follow.
So and I think I heard some of my coworkers say, we would wish to be able to like take all of the schools and do them all at the same time and bring them to where they need to be. And that is not the case. And in the operations team is not, one school is not more important than the other one. We look at it as all schools need improvement. All schools need for us to make major renovations and things to it. But the one thing, and I'm sorry, my voice, I'm like tense, I'm losing it a little bit. But the one thing that I have to reiterate is this new partnership that we are working with the city to make sure that even if you don't see your school on the list, it doesn't mean that there isn't projects coming up and there isn't other things that we will be working on in every particular schools in the district. And sorry if I'm all over the place, Dion, you want to take it on?
No, good job. So I would say that, there are 14 schools specifically in this capital plan, but as was mentioned earlier by Teresa, the capital plan does not represent every single investment that we're making in schools. We're making many more investments. We have probably more than 100 projects that are either ongoing or planned for many schools. And so as far as the capital plan, if your school is not listed in this year's plan, it doesn't mean that it won't be in a future plan. It's just where we are at this moment. And as I said, we're doing a more detailed and thorough facilities assessment that will supplement what we already have. And using the information that we'll get from the design studies, we'll be developing a more broader, more robust citywide plan.
The next question, what are the specific plans for expanding Madison Park Vocational Technical High School? Who in the community was involved in the creation of the plan? Yes, that's kind of updates on Madison Park Vocational Tech High School.
So I'll start, then I'll ask Kerry to jump in because a part of that answer is going to be that your voice, whoever asked that question, you're going to be a part of the process of developing what their plan looks like. Where we are now is that there is a financial commitment in this year's capital plan to begin that process of doing that assessment or study, however you want to refer to it, that will launch the programming and design based on strong community engagement and talking to and getting input from experts, particularly around vocational schools, to develop what that school would look like and how we can also make sure it's contributing to our green sector jobs. I'll turn it over to Kerry just to add whatever you think I may have missed.
Sure. No, thanks, Chief. So we are actually right now in the process of negotiation with the designer for Ann Behar is the one that won the award for the design, not the design, the study of the school and the program, but also working with a world-renowned vocational expert who's done multiple projects for the MSBA, and his name escapes me right now. But he will, with that, we will be looking at what are the future jobs? What do we need to start thinking of to build for the campus? It's a huge campus. What are the next steps, and how do we want to do this, and how does the O'Brien fit into that site, or does it fit in that site? So those things, again, separate community process, but will be looked at. And we are in the middle of negotiating right now with the designer to finalize that and start the process and start a kickoff meeting and then start the community process as part of that.
And Chief Iris, the only thing I would add to that is that we also know current information about Madison Park, the current programs, and the current different reports and initiatives that have been launched in Madison Park, and different requests that have been submitted to date. So a lot of that information is going to be given to the architects and given to the folks doing the study, and that helps inform where we go next. But obviously, like we mentioned, it'll still be ongoing community engagement with regard to what we do.
Thank you for that. Want to also do a time check. We have about 5 minutes left, but I do want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible before we have to conclude tonight. So the next question is, what happened to having two paths, K through 6 and 7 to 12 and K through 8 and 9 to 12? Are you turning all K through 8s to K through 6? What is the implication of that for K through 8 dual language schools?
Happy to jump in on that one, Brianna. So the school committee, the superintendent proposed to the school committee, I think it's about 3 years ago now, to move the district to a single point of transition, which is a K to 6 or pre-K to 6 is our hope, and 7 to 12 model. We know that there are really some phenomenal K to 8s and also phenomenal 9 to 12s that exist in this district. So when we have been transitioning schools to the new K to 6 or 7 to 12 model, we certainly take into consideration physical space, because obviously that really matters. But we also take a look at programming and community input. So, I think any of the K to 8s that are remaining, before we would make that decision, we would go to the community and talk to them about that.
Thank you for that answer. I'm going to ask one last question before we kind of conclude for the night. Okay. As a part of this plan, there will be 25 plus new hires for BPS and City Hall to support with the operations, which is very exciting. Will there be an investment as well for family engagement? What is the plan for authentic family engagement going forward? And how is the engagement with equity roundtables at BPS schools being integrated into the BPS Green New Deal for BPS process?
I'll start and then turn it over to BPS. And I think there are also some other questions I'm seeing in the chat around engagement, specifically around certain schools. I just want to state, as clearly as I can, that engagement is critical for us and important to us for every single project. That's why they all begin with a study, and that study includes like thorough community engagement. And so we are committing to that. And I know BPS is also looking to increase staff, to increase our capacity, but I'll ask either Sam or Indy just to speak more in detail about that and also about the other parts of the question.
I'm going to have Sam go into details, but you're right, Dion. We have added a couple of engagement positions whose individual's job will be specifically to work on the engagement part of this capital plan, but to work closely with our engagement team and the schools community to make sure that there is a dedicated individuals to work with the schools and the family. So that, as Dion mentioned, that is a priority, like real engagement. I know that is one of the complaints that we have heard a number of times. And we're really committed to make sure that, we do the work that we said we're going to do and make sure this engagement is that priority. Go ahead,
And-
Sam.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that in addition to the 2 additional FTEs that we've committed to this project, we also will be assigning project managers to project manage every project in every school, as well as have operational leaders who work closely with our school superintendents, also part of the work. So we'll have repurpose some positions that support schools currently and making sure they're part of the conversations going forward. They're part of the engagement and also help us be able to have more conversation and more dialogue, take notes and bring that back to be synthesized for the group. So it'll be a team effort going forward all around. And the actual positions dedicated solely for this project will help alleviate some of the tension on the community engagement department currently. And as far as the community equity roundtables go, we'll be working closely with Dr. Charles Branson's office to make sure that some of that engagement does take shape in those forums as well.
Thank you all, and thank you to the families, parents, and community that really showed up today and had questions and took their time in their evening to listen in. As we wrap up to tonight, as you can see, this is a team effort, and also the team includes you all, the neighbors, the teachers, the parents, the caregivers. Really, this is a collective effort to make sure we're instilling and providing school environments that our children could thrive and flourish in. Again, we will have someone drop in the chat an email that is directly being monitored by a lot of the people how you see on this call, and making sure that we have that level of connectivity. There's also a deep commitment, as you have heard from this team, of community engagement. This is not the last time you will see all of us. And this is not the first time you've seen a lot of the faces on these calls, I'm sure. And I know that there's a commitment to the deep level of engagement that is required to address the concerns and needs that we see with across the district. And again, excited for the teamwork, excited for the partnership, and look forward to many more Zoom calls or hopefully in person. So thank you all and have a really good night. Thank you.